Namaste, Dhanava Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master on Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 3, the Status Quo, Chapter 31, Text 4. Chaturbir Dhata Vashapta Panchabhikshut Trid Udbhava Sadbhir Jarayunavita Kuksho Brahmayati Dakshine. Within 4 months of the date of conception, the seven essential ingredients of the body, namely child, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen, come into existence. At the end of 5 months, hunger and thirst make themselves felt, and at the end of 6 months, the fetus enclosed by the amnion begins to move on the right side of the abdomen. Purport. When the body of the child is completely formed at the end of 6 months, the child, if he is male, begins to move to the right side, and if female, she tries to move on the left. Text 5. Matur jagdhana panadyar idhadatur asammate sitevin mutrayorgarte Sajantor Jantu Sambhave. Deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in the abominable residence of stools and urine, which is the breeding place of all kinds of worms. Purport. In the Markandeya Purana, it is said that in the intestine of the mother, the umbilical cord, which is known as Apyayani, joins the mother to the abdomen of the child, and through this passage, the child within the womb accepts the mother's assimilated foodstuff. In this way, the child is fed by the mother's intestine within the womb and grows from day to day. The statement of the Markandeya Purana about the child's situation within the womb is exactly corroborated by modern medical science, and thus the authority of the Puranas cannot be disproved, as is sometimes attempted by Mayavadi philosophers. Since the child depends completely on the assimilated foodstuff of the mother, during pregnancy there are restrictions on the food taken by the mother. Too much salt, chili, onion, and similar food is forbidden for the pregnant mother because the child's body is too delicate and new for him to tolerate such pungent food. Restrictions and precautions to be taken by the pregnant mother, as enunciated in the Smriti scriptures of Vedic literature, are very useful. We can understand from the Vedic literature how much care is taken to beget a nice child in society. The Garbhadhana ceremony before sexual intercourse was compulsory for persons in the higher grades of society, and it is very scientific. Other processes recommended in the Vedic literature during pregnancy are also very important. To take care of the child is the primary duty of the parents, because if such care is taken, society will be filled with good population to maintain peace and prosperity of the society, countrymen, and human race. Text 6. Krimi bhikshata sarvanga so kumaryat pratikshanam morcham apnotu rupleshas tatratyai kshudhitarmuhu. Bitten again and again all over the body by the hungry worms in the abdomen itself, the child suffers terrible agony because of his tenderness. He thus becomes unconscious the moment after moment because of the terrible condition. Purport. The miserable condition of the material existence is not felt when we come out of the womb of the mother, but is also present within the womb. Miserable life begins from the moment the living entity begins to contact his material body. Unfortunately, we forget this experience and do not take the miseries of birth very seriously. In Bhagavad Gita, therefore, it is specifically mentioned that one should be very alert to understand the specific difficulties of birth and death. Just as during the formation of this body, we have to pass through so many difficulties within the womb of the mother, at the time of death, there are also many difficulties. As described in the previous chapter, one has to transmigrate from one body to another, and the transmigration into the bodies of dogs and hogs is especially miserable. But despite such miserable conditions due to the spell of Maya, we forget everything and become enamored by the present so-called happiness, which is described as actually no more than a counteraction to distress. Text 7. Katutikshnoshna lavana ruksham ladibir ulbanai matru bhuktar upasprishta sarvangotita vedana. Owing to the mother's eating bitter, pungent foodstuffs, or food which is too salty or too sour, the body of the child incessantly suffers pain, which are almost intolerable. Purport. All descriptions of the child's bodily situation in the womb of the mother are beyond our conception. It is very difficult to remain in such a position, but still the child has to remain. Because his consciousness is not very developed, the child can tolerate it, otherwise he would die. That is the benediction of Maya, who endows the suffering body with the qualifications for tolerating such terrible tortures. Text 8. Ubhena samvratas tasmin antraischa bahir avrata ashte kritva shira kuksha Bhuvna prishta shirodara. Placed within the amnion and covered outside by the intestines, the child remains lying on one side of the abdomen, his head turned towards his belly, and his back and neck arched like a bow. Purport. If a grown man were put into such a condition as the child within the abdomen, completely entangled in all respects, it would be impossible for him to live even for a few seconds. Unfortunately, we forget all these sufferings and try to be happy in this life, not caring for the liberation of the soul from the entanglement of birth and death. It is an unfortunate civilization in which these matters are not plainly discussed to make people understand the precarious condition of material existence. Text 9. Akalpasvanga chetasyam shakunta eva panjare tatra labda smritir daivat karma janma satodbhavam smarandirgam anuchvasam sarma kim nama vindate. The child thus remains just like a bird in a cage without freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births, and he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Purport. After birth, the child may forget about the difficulties of his past lives, but when we are grown up, we can at least understand the grievous tortures undergone at birth and death by reading the authorized scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. If we do not believe in the scriptures, that is a different question. But if we have faith in the authority of such descriptions, then we must prepare for our freedom in the next life. That is possible in this human form of life. One who does not take heed of these indications of suffering in human existence is said to be undoubtedly committing suicide. It is said that this human form of life is the only means for crossing over the nescience of Maya, or material existence. We have a very efficient boat in this human form of body, and there is a very expert captain, the spiritual master. The scriptural injunctions are like favorable winds. If we do not cross over the ocean of nescience of material existence in spite of all these facilities, then certainly we are all intentionally committing suicide. Text 10. Arabhya Shaptamanmasa Labdha Bodho Pivepita Naikatrashte Sutivatar Vishtabur Eva Sodara. Thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month after his conception, the child is tossed downward by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. Like the worms born of the same filthy abdominal cavity, he cannot remain in one place. Purport. At the end of the 7th month, the child is moved by the bodily air and does not remain in the same place, for the entire uterine system becomes slackened before delivery. The worms have been described here as Sodara. Sodara means born of the same mother. Since the child is born from the womb of the mother, and the worms are also born of the fermentation within the womb of the same mother, under the circumstances, the child and the worms are actually brothers. We are very anxious to establish universal brotherhood among human beings, but we should take into consideration that even the worms are our brothers, what to speak of other living entities. Therefore, we should be concerned about all living entities. Text 11. Natamana Rishir Bita Sapta Vadri Kritanjali Stuvita Tam Vikolavya Vachayeno Darepita. The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition. Purport. It is said that when a woman is having labor pains, she promises that she will never again become pregnant and suffer from such severely painful condition. Similarly, when one is undergoing some surgical operation, he promises that he'll never again act in such a way as to become diseased and have to undergo medical surgery. Or when one falls into danger, he promises that he will never again make that same mistake. Similarly, the living entity, when put into a hellish condition of life, prays to the Lord that he will never again commit sinful activities and have to be put into the womb for repeated birth and death. In the hellish condition within the womb, the living entity is very much afraid of being born again, but when he is out of the womb, he is in full life and good health. He forgets everything and commits again and again the same sins for which he was put into the terrible condition of existence. Text 12. Jantor uvacha tasyo pashanam avitam jagad ichayita nana tanur bhuvi chalach charanar vindam soham vrajami sharanam yakuto bayame yene drishi gatir adasya sato nurupa. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only, because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. Purport. The word Chalach Charanaravindam refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who actually walks or travels upon the surface of the world. For example, Lord Ramachandra actually walked on the surface of the world, and Lord Krishna also walked just like an ordinary man. The prayer is therefore offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who descends to the surface of this earth or any other part of the universe, for the protection of the pious and the destruction of the impious. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that when there is an increase of irreligion and discrepancies arise in the real religious activities, that the Supreme Lord comes to protect the pious and kill the impious. This verse indicates Lord Krishna. Another significant point in this verse is that the Lord comes Ichaya, by his own will. As Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita, Sambhavyamatma Mayaya, I appear at my will by my internal potency. He is not forced to come by the laws of material nature. It is stated here, Ichaya. He does not assume any form as the impersonalists think because he comes at his own will. And the form which he descends in is his eternal form. As the Supreme Lord puts the living entity into the condition of horrible existence, he can also deliver him, and therefore one should seek shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna demands, give up everything and surrender unto me. And it is also said in Bhagavad Gita that anyone who approaches him does not come back to accept the form in material existence, but goes back to Godhead, back home, never to return. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 13 on Monday. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Rupa Nuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhaktivedanta Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Nishangapuri Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Baladev Jagannath Jug, Subhadra Jug Ki Jai, Ganga Mai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai, Sham Kund Radha Kund Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Bhakti Vrinda Devi Ki Jai, Jai Srimad Bhagavatam, Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Jai Scientific Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai, Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute Ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol, Jai Shrimati Uma Devi Dasi Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Sri Krishna Keshav Prabhu Ji Ki Jai.
Jai Gurudev. Dandavat Didi.